Hello and welcome back to In the Clock Ends pre-match pint. This week it's a Fulham edition. This evening it's going to sound a little bit different. We are missing the main man, Mr. Celebrity himself, Steve. It's going to be the format going forward. Steve's just got quite a bit coming up at the minute. We've mentioned it before, but he is getting married, which does take a little bit of the front row seat in this particular circumstance. So this evening, we are joined once again by James. James, good evening to you, mate.
Good evening, Kelvin. Thanks for having me. And as always, I'm very happy to be the super sub coming off the bench.
Oh, you're not really a super sub now. I think you're more of a squad rotation, but definitely more than often in the starting 11, to be perfectly honest.
Squad rotation. I'll take that. That's quite a nice way of putting that.
Yeah, I think you've definitely upgraded from a super sub, mate. That's for sure. Those days are long behind us.
Oh, thank you very much, mate. How are you? Anyway.
Yeah, can't complain too much. I mean, look, busy week with work and just in from playing five-a-side. I wasn't going to cancel on this week because I missed out last week, so I could let you play five-a-side.
Sorry, mate.
No, it is what it is. You got to commit to the cause every now and again. So no, it's good to get out, get a little run about, and the legs still work, mate. I think that's the main thing when you're mid to late 30s, as painful as that is to say. But what about yourself? All good on your side?
Yeah, all good. Still nursing a little bit of a knee injury from my own six-a-side exploits from last week. But no, we're getting there, mate. We're getting there. What's your team called, by the way?
It's not. It's more of a. It's not a team. It's not a competitive league, which I do miss out on because I do like that competitive edge. It's more of a fuck a lot of people together to make up the numbers and have a knockabout on a Wednesday evening, to be honest. But so it's not quite as structured as I'd like it. But it's just nice to play football, isn't it? As long as I'll play football as long as the legs allow me to, I think, at this stage. But one thing that's just popped back into my mind, and you didn't bring this up last week, though. I'd love for you to tell the listeners about your moment where you thought you were Dennis Bergkamp last week. Is that correct?
You're throwing me under the bus here, mate, already. It's like Steve's here and we don't even know about it.
Exactly. It's not me that's being thrown under the bus for a change, and it feels quite nice. You can obviously do it later on in due course.
No. I will take this one for the team. So I was chatting with Kelvin and Steve after the podcast last week. So if you did tune into the pre-match pint, we were talking about the 96-98 home shirt. And one of the standout moments for me in that shirt is Dennis Bergkamp and that wonderful hat-trick he scored against Leicester. And
sublime.
Yeah, absolutely sublime. And there's a certain goal, I think it was the third one in the hat-trick, where David Platt, he kind of floats a lovely ball through, and Dennis, we all know what happens. He takes a touch with one foot, controls it with the other, and then goes to very calmly slot it in the corner. Now, I had a very similar situation in my six-a-side game the other week, and I found the ball coming over my head, and I had that moment going through my head. First touch, sublime. Probably the best first touch I have ever had and ever will have in the history of my six-a-side career. Unfortunately, the second touch didn't quite go to plan. Far too heavy. The ball then sprung up off my foot into my face. Surprised I didn't give myself a nosebleed. The rest of the team absolutely in hysterics of laughter, thinking, "What on earth is this guy doing? Who on earth does he think he is?" So yeah, my Bergkamp moment didn't really go to plan, unfortunately.
Did you get the horrible watery eyes after the ball in the snout sort? Like when it hits you square in the nose, it gives you, either a nosebleed or very watery eyes. To the point where it looks like you're crying, but you're not. But everyone will point out that you are, just to, poke the bear, or, kick a man while he's down and all that.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone was saying, "Oh, what are you crying for, mate?" But it was just sensitive eyes. That's all. Sensitive eyes.
Oh, look, you guys a chance to be prime Bergkamp and you fucked it. But that's life as a amateur footballer, I guess, to be honest. Sometimes we think we're elite, and every now and again our bodies and our touches will just remind us that we're really fucking not. So yeah, I'm glad you shared that, though. That did tickle me after you said that last week after the podcast. But look, tell you what, let's dig into some of the news which is floating around at the minute before we get stuck into, the pre-game stuff on Fulham. There's a few things knocking around, isn't there? I say that there's a few things. There's one which has been going on for what feels like an eternity, and that's obviously the Tielemans deal. I mean, just out of interest, how do you kind of feel about that? If that deal does come to fruition, do you think that's a player that can, slot into either the starting 11 or the squad? Would it be a player that you'd like to see in red and white?
Throughout the summer, I've definitely been a fan of the Tielemans signing and thought he would be the perfect addition to the squad. He's got that experience. He's played a lot of European football with Leicester, and I could definitely have seen him overtaking Xhaka and playing that position. But from what I've seen of Xhaka so far this season and, moving into that more advanced role, I'm thinking more and more, do we need Tielemans? He has been an absolute revolution this season, Xhaka. And I guess my only concern is depth and whether can Sambi come in and play that Xhaka role, which Xhaka is now playing. If not, then maybe, yes, there is still space for Tielemans, but, he hasn't started very well either. Whether that's because he's got the transfer speculation running around his head or not, who knows? But I'm not as keen on it as what I was. And that's the mad thing about the transfer window, isn't it? Like 1 minute, we're all, putting all of our cards in for thinking, yes, this is definitely the signing we want. And then the next minute, you think, well, actually, maybe it's not for us after all.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those where, I kind of agree with you a little bit. I've kind of got to the point with transfers now where I like rumours, right? And I like looking at them and, it definitely keeps you ticking throughout the summer, doesn't it, when there's no football going on and you get excited and, you start to project thoughts of how will this player fit in? What will he be able to do for us? All that sort of stuff. But I've generally got to the point where, and it's an unusual place to get to with Arsenal because historically, well, not historically, but over the last number of years, we were fairly fucking bang average when it came to transfers and we had a lot of misses. Whereas a lot of people started to talk about the last couple of summers, we've brought in some really good players, a lot of hits, very few misses. I think, if you want to look at the misses, Tavares will probably fall into that. I think Sambi's kind of, floating around that peripheral part of, is it going to work long term? We're not sure. I don't think we've even seen enough of him to even make a judgment, but that alone says a lot. Whereas you look at everybody else, I mean, they've just bolstered the squad. They've pretty much bolstered the starting 11. So I'm kind of just like, do you know what? Whatever the club, Arteta or whoever is involved there do, whatever they decide to do, I'm kind of happy to let them just do it at this stage. And whoever comes in, I've got confidence now at this point where I'll be happy with whoever they kind of bring in at this point. I'm not too fussed who it is because I think, they're really going after certain qualities in player. And I think one of the big things that we've all noticed is, Arteta's very keen on the character of an individual as well, to make sure they have the right, characteristics to not only just fit stylistically from a footballing perspective, but they need to blend in with the squad to keep that harmony high. So is that something that you kind of feel, similar to yourself? Have you got that confidence from an executive level that whoever they kind of bring in, you're kind of happy to see that?
Absolutely. I mean, since Raul left the club and Edu has kind of taken on that role, our hit rate with transfers has been absolutely remarkable. And I think we just do have to trust them at this point because they are picking exactly the right players. And these players that are coming into the club, they are walking straight into that starting 11. I mean, you look at Zinchenko, for example, I think they were talking about it on the Athletic podcast as it being a real kind of sliding doors moment because, it could have been Martinez at Man United. And if we would have got Martinez, then would we have got Zinchenko? Whereas now you look at what Zinchenko's doing for the team and you think, crikey, I can't imagine a team where he's not there in the middle. And he does seem to have that level of confidence. He does seem to have that level of experience where it is dragging people up in the same way as what Jesus is doing at the moment. So, and that is a champion mentality. And, these boys are getting used to being top of the league. They are used to being top of the league. So, and hopefully this is something that is here to stay.
No, definitely. And I think one of the nice things about, the transfer we've made as well, and it's something which, I've actually kind of been advocating for quite a while, and that's buying Premier League proven players, right? Because, you said that these players are walking in and they're walking in for a reason because, they're not having to adapt. We're not having, if you look at, you just brought up Martinez there, he's going to have to adapt, coming from the Dutch league to the Premier League. That's quite a leap, to be honest with you, because we all know that, the Premier League's the strongest league in the world by quite some distance now at this point, and it's strong throughout from top to bottom, as we're seeing, right? If you look at the results of the weekend, Leeds, wonderfully pulled Chelsea's pants down, and Brentford obviously also had a pretty good result there against United recently, and Newcastle, you could kind of throw in that, they could have beat City at the weekend, so I think it is going to be a really topsy-turvy sort of season throughout. And I think, there's going to be surprise results throughout. And then you throw in the World Cup into the middle of it. Obviously, that's going to cause havoc for everybody involved, I think. But that transition and not having to wait for players to get up to speed is a big plus as well, from my point of view, for sure. But just moving on, I think one of the things which has definitely come to light today, obviously it's been in the news the last couple of days for sure, and that looks like, and I believe it's pretty much close to confirmed, is it? You might know better than me. I haven't had a chance to have a look at the news since I finished work, but Nicolas Pepe looks to be going out on loan. He's going back to League One, and he apparently has had offers from Leicester as well, I believe. It's something I did see. But how would you sum up, the transfer? And, you mentioned the old executives, Rao being one of them, and it's mad when you look back at that. That was a mental period for the club, to be honest. And I think Nicolas Pepe is, the prime example of just how crazy that particular period was. 72 million. It really hasn't worked out, to say the least. And I remember myself and probably most of us were really, really excited to see this player in an Arsenal shirt. But how do you feel about Nicolas Pepe heading back on loan to Nice?
I do feel sorry for him a little bit because the price tag was not his fault. That was agreed by the clubs, but I think unfortunately in my head he will always be known as £72 million Nicolas Pepe, just because it was such an enormous amount of money at the time. And unfortunately, a lot of water's gone under the bridge since Emery was there, but he wasn't the player Emery wanted. Emery wanted Wilfried Zaha, but no, he got Nicolas Pepe. So Emery didn't want him. And I think it's, it was very clear early on that Mikel Arteta didn't want him. So I do feel sorry for him because his whole Arsenal career, he's been here under managers where he, unfortunately, has been playing for a manager that, didn't really want him there. But, he has had the odd moment, and late on in not last season, the season before, he did show flourishes, and good luck to him. David Ornstein's reporting that it's pretty much a done deal. So when he reports something, most of the time it's going to happen. So I can only see it being a positive. I mean, we're not going to get anywhere near the money that we would like to get for him. £72 million. I think we'd be lucky to get 20-30 million at this stage. But
you'd be lucky to get 15-20, mate, to be perfectly honest. And that goes to show the level which he dropped to, which is a shame. And it is kind of one of those frustrating things as a fan where when you sign someone like that, and it was exciting, right? And we've also, like you said, we saw flashes and glimpses of what he's able to do. He scored some good goals, but the lack of consistency, and it was just, he's just not a Mikel Arteta player. I think that's been clear to see for quite some time. So I think you're right, though. It's, we wish him well, and I think it's best for both parties, that he goes and gets some regular football. And I do find it interesting that he's chosen to go back to France. I think that says a lot. I just don't think he's a player that suits the Premier League. He's always quite slight, isn't he? He's quite lightweight, I think, which, that doesn't apply to all players. You look at the likes of Bernardo Silva, very slight, but I know they're very different, so I'm not comparing the two. But when it comes to that physical side of the game, some people can kind of cope with it, and some can't, unfortunately. I think he definitely falls into that bracket. But the only, I guess, slight negative on it is there isn't an option to buy, which is maybe a little bit frustrating. But look, he's got 2 years left on his contract with us. So if he can go and have a reasonable season in France, then look, we might be able to recoup 15, 20 million. But he's 27, so it'll be a tough sell.
You know what though, mate? I think partly, yes, it is frustrating that there isn't the option to buy there, but that could end up being a positive. He ends up having a storming season, say, in League One, which, I can't see it, but you never know. He might do. And then we might then end up be able to negotiate a better price next summer than what we're able to negotiate now. Because, you know, if we were to put in a fee right now, I don't think you'd be looking at a lot of money. But, you know, if he scores, you know, 10, 15 goals in League One this year, then, you know, we're maybe negotiating for a different caliber of player. So, you know, look, good luck to him, and you never know what will happen in the future. But no, I certainly don't think he'll be remembered particularly fondly compared to the hype that surrounded him when we did first get the deal over the line.
Yeah, no, he won't be remembered fondly, but I do think, it's a case of, I think we're all just a little bit deflated with how it ended up. And we would have loved to saw something, you know, seen something different. But look, these things happen. So look, unless there's anything else you want to kind of bring up that's been in the news, we can get stuck into Fulham if you fancy it.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Let's go Fulham.
Cool. All right. Well, look, we face Fulham. We're on Saturday evening again at 5:30. So looking forward to that. Let's hope it goes similar to last week. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Plenty of singing. I don't know what that song might be, but I think we can have a ventured guess or an educated guess as to what that might be.
Mate, but that's been living rent free in my head for the last few days. I'm sure it's exactly the same as you. And unfortunately, I'm not going to the game this weekend, but I can imagine that the concourses are going to be absolutely booming with one song and one song only.
I'd love to hear like everybody in the Emirates just banging it out as well. To be honest, I think that'd be brilliant. Because we can generate some noise. We are generating noise in there, which is great at the minute. The atmosphere is so much better than what it has been over the last 10 years. You could even say at this point, which is also great to see. But looking back over the history between Arsenal and Fulham, obviously they were also down in the Championship last season. They had a very good season, though. I think that's safe to say. Mitrovic seemed to have found his feet and continued that form in early seasons so far. So the last time we actually played Fulham was in that COVID season, which, I mean, to be honest with you, looking back at some of these, you know, the highlights of these games, it's just very strange, right? It was strange at the time, but looking back at it now we've got fans back, I still find it really fucking odd that this happened, that we basically played pretty much it was near enough an entire season behind closed doors, right? I think I've asked this before. But...
No. Yeah, I think we mentioned it last week. But do you think it was, looking back on it now, do you think that lack of atmosphere, that lack of, you know, fans in grounds, I think you look back at some of these results and you think, well, that wasn't a great game, or you know, there weren't much to think about there. And 100%. You know, I think we thought about it at the time, but I think looking at what's going on now, especially with the atmosphere at the Emirates, you can see why the games weren't spectacular.
Yeah, no, I think there's two kind of categories for this, because there's some players that absolutely thrive off those sorts of environments, and there's other ones who will actually, you know, they're human beings, mate. It's probably really nerve-wracking, right? I know you get used to it, but it's like, you know, it's how I look at, you know, my job sometimes. I have to present to, you know, 100 people. I've been doing it for ages, but I still get nervous about it. Do you know what I mean? So I'm sure, imagine absolutely. Like performing under, you know, high pressure in front of people that all they want you to do is win. It must be, you know, insane. And I know that you always know that someone's watching on TV, but not having the 40, 60,000 people right in front of you screaming at you. And it must be, you know, there's going to be players that definitely thrived. And I think teams did thrive in that particular season as well. I mean, there were some really bizarre results, weren't there? Like, what was it? Villa beat Liverpool, was it 7-3 or something stupid like that in that season?
That game. Yeah,
like,
some
crazy
weird
stuff.
Weird ones.
Yeah, some really strange things going on. So looking back to the games, we actually started the season, that COVID season, with a 3-0 away win. We can dig into that very slightly because there was, you know, a couple of good goals in there, and there was a really, dare I say, decent performance from Willian. It was the only game I think this guy actually showed up in an Arsenal shirt, to be honest with you.
I think you call it a collector's item. I think that was. They were very few and far between. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, he must have got all of his bonuses just in that one match, to be honest with you, and he's decided to put his feet up thereafter. But no, 3-0 away win. It was the goal scorers that evening, James, actually. I know Aubameyang definitely got one. Did Willian get one himself?
I know Aubameyang got the third. Gabriel scored on his debut as well.
Yeah.
That, you know, always good to see. And I can't remember off the top of my head who got the third one there. It'll come to me. But no, definitely the pick of the bunch was definitely the Aubameyang goal. And, you know, and like you say, it was Willian starting his first game for Arsenal, and he played decent that day. And the ball he plays across pitch to Aubameyang, and Aubameyang, quite majestically then kind of whips it in from the top left-hand side of the box there. And I remember thinking at the time, maybe this Willian thing is going to work out after all. And how we were wrong. But memories of that game as well, just that beautiful kit as well. I was a big fan of the kit on that day, and
yes,
it was the first time we'd seen it. If people aren't familiar, it was the third kit that season with I think the club tried to say that it was inspired by night skies above the Emirates, and then with the pinky, I know, tell me about it, the pinky kind of orangey stripes and logo. Yeah, I think it really did look smart. But
it looks smart. That's some crazy marketing though, isn't it? The night sky over just the Emirates. No, I mean, night sky doesn't appear anywhere else.
No, absolutely not. But these it's mad how they promote kits, so isn't it? I think I think they can just think of anything. They think of anything and say, yep, that's what we based it on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the white kit, the marbles. I was like, for fuck's sake, lads, come on. It's just someone put some tie-dye on this, and then you've just decided to call it after the Marble Halls just to appeal to the older generation. Not that the younger fans even probably really care about the Marble Halls these days, to be perfectly honest with you. But going to the home game, I think it's a bit of a shite game by all accounts. 1-1 draw. This was kind of the period where our form wasn't great. After starting the season quite well, I think we dipped off a little bit. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't have any sort of memories of this game. I mean, do you have any? I should have probably looked, to be honest, but there we go. That's me.
So the goal that day was a late Eddie Nketiah finish, and he really kind of got us out of a hole there. But I think it was towards the end of the season. The season had already kind of run its course at that point in terms of the league. I think we were destined for that mid-table, 8th place finish. And, Fulham were fighting for their lives. And, I think they would have been disappointed on the day because they thought that they were going to get that 1-0 victory, which could have been crucial to them staying up. But no, that season, that game, I think everything about it was just unremarkable, really, unfortunately.
That whole period of life, I think we can all just resign it to the bin, to be perfectly honest, because it was all a bit weird, wasn't it? Really strange. But just looking at the head-to-head record, obviously there's a little bit more to look back on than what we had for Bournemouth last weekend, that's for sure. We've played Fulham 40 times. Sorry, correct me there. We haven't played them 40 times. We beat them 40 times, drawn 11, lost 8. So, look, I would expect a record like that against a team like Fulham, to be perfectly honest with you. Looking at the current form as well, going into it, there's no need for us to talk about our current form. I think we're all pretty aware of how well we're doing. It's looking pretty decent. But I think Fulham, coming up from the Championship, I think they've had a pretty decent start. To be honest, they haven't lost a game yet. 2 draws. Obviously, one of them was the opening game against Liverpool, which when you look at it now with a little bit more context, it's a good result, right? But I think Liverpool are struggling a little bit, to say the least. I thought they might struggle to keep pace with City this season, but I think they're in that as it stands. I think unless something dramatic happens, they're going to be in the top 4 battle for sure, unless they buck their ideas up. Do you kind of feel the same what you've seen with them so far, or do you think they'll turn it around?
I think they'll turn it around. I think they'll be there or thereabouts, and I think if we could be finishing above Liverpool, then I think we've got a top 2 place, because I can't see them not finishing second. I feel like they'll get it together. Although saying that, I was speaking to a Liverpool fan the other day, and they did point out that Jurgen Klopp, he had all this success at Dortmund, and then it was about this time where the wheels did start to come off at Dortmund. So you never know, it might be something like that. But no, I think Fulham in general, that 2-2 draw on the opening day of the season, it did show what they were about, and it does show that although they are a newly promoted club, they are not to be taken lightly. They scored so many goals in the Championship last year. I had a look into it, and they scored 106 goals. Okay, and that was 30. That was 32 more than any other team.
Wow!
And a lot of that was Mitrovic, who again,
how many did he end up with last season? Did he not break? He broke the record, didn't he?
Yeah. So he set a championship record of 43 goals last season.
Fucking hell.
And he has had the opportunity in the Premier League before, and it hasn't quite gone right for him. And people have said, look, can he do it in the Prem? Is he just a championship striker? But look, so far, he's, doing well. He's strong, he's physical, he's definitely got an eye for goal. And, I think I alluded to it last week that I was interested to see how Saliba got on against, the more physical Kiefer Moore. But that didn't really happen in the Bournemouth game, I think just because we dominated it so much. Whereas this guy, if you think of a big, tall, target man, strong, you think of Mitrovic at the moment. So it'd be really interesting to see how Saliba gets on from that perspective, because I don't think he's going to come up against a much tougher test than what he'll face this weekend.
A couple of other guys I could probably think of. One particular at Manchester City who's just an absolute bully, to say the least. But I think, you're absolutely spot on. And I was just about to bring it up myself because I know that you were kind of keen to see how Saliba would have dealt with that test, but it just didn't happen in any way, shape, or form because of the way we dominated that game last week. Well, I think this will be a slightly different test. Mitrovic is experienced. He has played in the Premier League. He's off the back of a good season. He's had a good start. So he's brimming with confidence, and he's a big lad, and he's not afraid to throw it around either. I think that's the difference between himself and Kiefer Moore. Kiefer Moore's just finding his feet at this stage, to be honest with you, especially in the Premier League. So, it'd be a very different task. But look, if we can assert ourselves like we did last week, then hopefully, touch wood, we can have another dominant display where the defence is kind of just there to be sang at. To be honest with you, that would be great.
Absolutely. I mean, Fulham in general, I guess, it is a London derby, but, when I think about Fulham, I don't have anything against them. No, they are a nice club. They're a family club. Up until recently, they still had a neutral section in their grounds, which kind of just shows you. Yeah, they did. Yeah. The only reason why it's gone now, apparently, is because of redevelopment work. So you could go and buy a ticket and sit in the neutral section, which shows that, apologies to any Fulham fans listening, and I'm sure there will probably be many of you, that it doesn't really seem like that much of an imposing atmosphere. I know it's at the Emirates, but they're away fans. We'll see what noise they make, but no, they just seem like a nice club. And what Marco Silva's doing there, he's kind of rebuilding his reputation, really, isn't he? He did a fantastic job at Hull and Watford, and then it didn't really work out for him at Everton. So
it's going to be out for many at Everton, though. Let's be
funny
perfect.
Funny that, isn't it? There seems to be a connection there.
Look, I'm happy that Frank Lampard's falling flat on his face, to be honest with you. There was a bit of me that really wanted them to go down just to see it. I know that sounds really bad, but that's half the fun of football, isn't it? I want to see things that are out of the ordinary.
I was all for it, mate. I was all for it that sunny day on the last game of the season, but unfortunately, we didn't quite get the day we wanted on our end and their end. But let's not go into that.
No, we don't need to bring that up in any way at all. Let's quickly move on from any discussions of the way last season ended. But looking at possible lineups, and again, look, it's a bit of a shallow conversation, I think, because there's not a lot that we can kind of dig into around it. But do you think we're going to see again the same starting 11? Obviously, we kind of spoke, or I kind of alluded to the fact last week on the pre-match pint that I'd love to kind of see some rotation, and I do think these type of home games against slightly lesser opposition are the games where you would maybe look at doing that. Do you think it will happen, or do you think we're literally going to go, it's not broke, don't fix it, continue as you are, lads, this is great?
I would be absolutely amazed if anything changes from the lineup that we've seen so far. Just don't, if it's not fixed, then don't break it.
I love that. Yeah, that was the wrong way around.
That was the wrong way around.
Love that.
And I went halfway through it as well and thought, should I just keep going?
I'm committing to it. I love it.
Committed to the course halfway through. But no, look, I think we'll see exactly the same lineup as what we have done so far. Interestingly enough, the League Cup draw is tonight, so round 3 is coming up shortly, and the Europa League draw is this Friday. So like we alluded to last week, I think we will see rotation when we are playing twice a week. But when I think of some of the players that could come in, it's just going to be interesting to see how they do fit in, because you
Mm.
know, if you think of Kieran Tierney, for example, when he
Yeah.
was fit last season, number one or, number two name on the team sheet type of player. But you see how Zinchenko's playing now and how he's moving more centrally. And when have you seen him overlap? And that is exactly what Kieran Tierney is all about. So, I think that some of those players who were thinking, oh, yeah, well, maybe he'll come in or maybe he'll come in, I think in KT's position, that might not be quite as easy as what it has been previously for him to come back in. And I guess my only other thought has been Eddie Nketiah this week as well, and his role. And obviously, he signed that big contract, and he would have known Jesus was signing. Like,
100%.
That wasn't. It's not a thing where he would have signed and then by accident we then signed with Jesus, So he's either signed knowing that he's going to be back up, or he's got the genuine belief that he could push Jesus to be the main striker. And it's interesting because, I was watching the end of All or Nothing, finally managed to watch the last few episodes. And there was that podcast that he did, and he talks about how he was critical of a lack of opportunity to start multiple games, and he wasn't being given the chance. And, it's very early days, but at the moment, I can't see him getting in front of Jesus. So he's in the same situation he was last year, unfortunately. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops. But barring any injury or anything like that, I think we're going to see exactly the same starting 11.
Yeah, I think they're, like we just alluded to, there's going to be plenty of game time for him, in the League Cup. Hopefully the early rounds of the FA Cup, if we can get more than one round this season, that'd be great. So that there is going to be game time here. But one thing I just wanted to just quickly pop back to is the KT situation that you kind of brought up there. And I find it a little funny that it's kind of happened twice in the last two seasons, right? Where through injury, he's lost his place. It was fun. You look back to, the start of last season when Tavares came into the side, there were discussions that, Tierney had to fight back for his place, because it's crazy to say it now, but Tavares looked really, really good, didn't he, when he first came in? And a lot of us were like, well, Tierney might struggle to get back in. And we all know his injury history, since coming to the club's not great. Hopefully that's behind him. But right now, we're having the same discussion. And the discussion's a lot different because Zinchenko is a much better player than Tavares, right? There's no two ways about that. So I think it's good though, right? One of the things I've definitely alluded to is having that competition throughout the squad can only be a good thing. You want that elite competition throughout. You want that competitive environment internally, because that just drives the quality up every day. Will drive performances up on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, whenever it is that we play. But I think it is funny. Well, not funny necessarily in the grand scheme of things, but I think it's an interesting kind of point to look at, because it's happened to him twice, that he's lost his position, and we're back to having the same conversation that we kind of were this time, last year, that can he get his place back? What would you do in this? If you're Arteta in this situation, like, when would you bring Tierney back in?
For me, you don't play him until you get a League Cup game or until you get a Europa League game at this point, because Zinchenko is playing so well. And I think he's so key to what we're doing at the moment and how secure we are. And I think Zinchenko makes Xhaka look a much better player as well, with them both being there as well. So look, KT's got to bide his time. He is known for, wearing his heart on his sleeve. And, I'm sure he'll be training well, and I'm sure he'll be doing everything he can to let Mikel know that he needs to be back in the team. But for me, I only see it as a positive. You've got the same situation with Emil Smith-Rowe and Martinelli. Unfortunately, Emil Smith-Rowe is coming to this season. He's been injured, and then Martinelli is going from strength to strength. And, and I'm a massive fan of Emil Smith-Rowe. I've got him on the back of my home shirt for this season and would love to see him get back in the team. But at the moment, it's one of those sliding doors moments where Martinelli looks undroppable at the moment. The same with Zinchenko. And, whilst that's going on, you can't be feeling sorry for these guys. They've just got to think, right, I've got to pull my socks up. And, it's that competition in training that hopefully will just drive the standard up.
Yeah, no, I think that that is exactly it, and it's getting used to that situation again, isn't it? Really, like I think where we've had such thin squad for the last few years, and then just before that, it was a lack of quality and depth within the squad. So these sorts of things just they didn't necessarily come to our minds. It wasn't a case of who can start where. I mean, having these kind of conversations, it's ultimately quite refreshing, isn't it? I guess that we're having them about players at Arsenal, about our starting 11. Too many times have we looked at our starting 11 and been disappointed that someone's starting, whereas now, I mean, it picks itself, and when it gets announced, you're very rarely disappointed with who's in it, and you could change out a few players and still not be disappointed, because again, having those options off the bench, something again we have severely lacked is options off the bench. Having that in a game, we haven't had to do anything drastic, I think, in our game so far. So that tactical adaptability in game hasn't really had to happen at this point. But it'd be interesting to see, because that situation will arise at some point. We will go behind in the game at some point. It'd be interesting to see how the team reacts. But also, if we're chasing the game, it'd be interesting to see what Arteta does as well, won't it?
Yeah, I think that's the only thing I kind of wanted to bring up towards the end of this Fulham conversation, really, is that, I've heard on other podcasts, they're talking about the fact that Arsenal haven't been behind yet. We haven't had to respond to that adversity. But what does give me the confidence is that in that Fulham game, we were under the cosh and we got that second goal. In the Leicester game, we conceded 2 goals, but so quickly we were up the other end and getting one back, and I'm hoping that it's that mentality that will help us in these moments where inevitably we are going to go 1-0 down, or we are going to go 2-0 down. And, as much as I'm confident about the weekend of the opening fixtures, this has been one that's been playing on my mind a little bit. And especially now, just because of the run we're on, I do think that it might be a little bit closer than some of the games we've seen so far. But, I've got the confidence that we can respond to that adversity. And, in the small periods that we've had so far, I think we've demonstrated that we'll be up to the task.
Yeah, no, I think we will. And it's nice going into these games with confidence, that's for sure, and anticipation that we're actually going to play quite well. It makes sitting down for me, obviously in front of the TV, a lot more entertaining. I think we've all sat through some pretty woeful times over the last few years, and you do it, you put yourself, you put yourself through the ringer watching Arsenal over the last number of years, and you sit there with not a lot of hope, which is pretty painful. And I know it's the hope that usually kills you, but I'd rather have that than nothing, because it got to the point where you had no hope at all, to be honest, which is pretty depressing. But I guess let's just move it on then. I think it's clear that the lineup will change. I think we'll all be pretty shocked if it is tinkered with, going into the game against Fulham. Obviously, one of the things we like to do in the pre-match podcast, or pre-pint, is look back at some of the previous games that we've played against Fulham, and some notable goals that have also been scored. I mean, one of my early memories was going all the way back to the late 90s, I think it was. Trying to think, I always have to go on kits. So that's how I do it. So I think we had the soft collar shirt, JVC, with the white trim. It was actually what last season's home shirt was based on, I believe, with the blue trim running down the side of the body. I think we beat them 3-1 away at the Cottage. I don't think I've actually ever seen Fulham at home, to be honest with you. I might have done over the years. But there were some good goals. I remember Bergkamp scoring one. But it's you love having a look back at the old games, don't you? And some of the goals which you forget about, right? Because there's been so many games that we just pointed out earlier. What sort of goals and games did you have a look at and definitely stood out, and brought back some fond memories?
Yeah, it was a lovely look back actually through the archives, especially because there was a goal which I remember at the time, blowing my mind, and I'd completely forgotten about it. So it was 2018-19 season. Again, very much like you, I do try and remember these things by the kits. So we were unfortunately in a Puma kit, but it was that navy Puma kit with the weird burgundy shorts, if you can remember, the same one that we played Valencia.
Yeah, I was going to say that's what it's probably. Yeah, that's what it's most fondly remembered for, is that away game at Valencia.
Yeah, that's the one I remember. But no, it was a proper kind of what I would say Arsene Wenger goal in terms of a proper team goal. And basically, just to give you a little run through, Aaron Ramsey's got the ball. Aaron Ramsey's got the ball right hand side of our defence, and just from there on in, it's just one touch, audacious flicks and touches from Lacazette, from Ramsey, from Bellerin, and then eventually works its way out to Aubameyang, who plays the cross in, and just the flick from Aaron Ramsey kind of plays it behind him, and outrageous. And I loved Aaron Ramsey as a player. Yeah. I was gutted when he went, and it was goals like that and that burst into the box that really kind of did remind me of him most fondly, just because that is what he was so good at. He did seem to be in the box at just the right time to be able to finish off these kind of attacks. But no, it was a wonderful goal. And just, I remember, Arsenal social media going mad about it. They kind of made little kind of video game based
I remember that,
gifs and stuff like that. And it properly was an Arsenal goal, and I think very similar to that goal against Norwich, which Jack Wilshere finishes off. And from all the ones I looked at, that was certainly up there as, well, definitely my favourite goal against Fulham, but probably one of my favourite goals in the modern era.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When you look at some of the team goals we have scored over the years, I always remember Thomas Rosicky scored a really good one. I think, who was that against? Maybe West Brom or something like that, with a really deft little chip over the keeper at the end. At the same end that Jack Wilshere scored his, I believe, against Norwich. But, you could also, I think it was the same season, we had a really good team goal against Leicester as well. Ozil and Aubameyang at the end, putting the finishing touches on a really good sweeping move. So we have it in us, and we always had it in us to play good football, and I think most sides do when they click, and when you're playing, elite level football. I think all these players can kind of pull it off, but when it does happen, and it happens so smoothly, and it's your team that does it, feels good, right? And that was there is nothing better, is there? I mean, to be honest with you, here's a question for you though. Actually, just thinking of this, off the cuff, and that's: would you prefer a goal like that against Fulham, or an absolute thunder bastard from 40 yards in off the crossbar? That's really torn you, actually.
Yeah, it has torn me, because on first thought I was saying team goal, but I think those kind of long range off the bar or off the woodwork type goals, which come out of nowhere, they do tend to be scored by some players that you wouldn't expect them to be scored by at times. So I think
Saliba. I know it wasn't 40 yards.
And I think I've got Xhaka in my mind, that he's, I know he's known a little bit for those long range shots. I mean, at one point at the Emirates, every time he got the ball, it was shoot, which I'm thinking, please don't shoot. But no, I think I've just gone on about how much I love a team goal, but if I could only choose one now, I think I'd actually go for the long range belter, just because it is almost a little bit more out the blue, a little bit unexpected, and I'll be the first to be going absolutely mental when Thomas Partey one day does score one of these goals.
Yeah, it's never going to happen. From what I've seen so far, it's never going to happen. But thinking about it, actually, there is, you love Aaron Ramsey. There's that team goal against Fulham, but then there's one of my favourite Arsenal goals of all time, away at Galatasaray on his weaker foot, when he's absolutely spanked one into the top left corner. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic goal at the time as well, away from home as well.
Yeah, so I think I'd prefer to see that. As much as I love the good football, right, we all do. But I think, crikey, a good thunder bastard from 30, 40 yards, whether it goes in off the woodwork or not, is always a pleasant sight, to say the least. But just looking at any other goals, I know we kind of alluded to earlier, but I think that Aubameyang finish in that first game of the 2020-21 season was really, really good. It's got that FIFA finesse finish about it, which he actually did a couple of times, didn't he? He actually, really mastered that finish around that period of time in his Arsenal career, where he'd open up. It wasn't quite the Thierry Henry finish, because it wasn't slid into the bottom far corner, which we all knew Thierry did time and time again in an Arsenal shirt. But that was a really good goal. And again, those sorts of finishes are always pleasant on the eye as well, aren't they?
No, that was a lovely goal. It really was. And that was at a time where Aubameyang was still on a real high. He just had scored those 2 goals, which got us the FA Cup. And then, he's just signed his new contract, and we're thinking this man's going from strength to strength. And unfortunately, the season didn't really pan out for him that well that year. But no, it was still a memorable goal. And like I say, that kit as well, I really do have a soft spot for it.
If you want to, but I have a soft spot for most Arsenal kits. But I tell you what, I was actually, when I was driving home from playing football earlier, saw a bloke walking around Dublin in the very first Puma home shirt that we had. And I just looked at it and I was like, man, that was a fucking terrible kit. But it really was shit. So yeah, we've come a long way. The Puma years were dark years for many reasons. From a kit point of view, players, yeah, the end of Wenger in, Wenger out. Crikey. I mean, yeah, bleak. Let's not get into that too much. But yeah, seeing that guy walking around that kit, I just thought that was awful. Really, really awful. But look, I guess we'll move it on. I think that's enough about Fulham. I think it's safe to say that you feel confident. I feel confident for 3 points. But it will be a test, and it'll be interesting to see, how we get on again against a slightly lesser team. But I think, being at home, I would think we would be disappointed if we didn't come away with 3 points. But I'll take them, as always, however they come. I think that's always the case. I don't care how we get 3 points as long as we get 3 points. But moving on to the next segment, we're going to move into the player profile for this week. Obviously, you had full reign of everything last week. So I thought, I'd pick this one out of the bag. And I decided to go with the little magician from Spain, that is Santi Cazorla. Which I think you'll all agree is a fantastic choice because I made it. But he was signed from Malaga in 2012 for 18 million. He made 129 appearances for the club, scoring 25 goals and 35 assists. He won 2 FA Cups along the way and 2 community shields. 2 community shields. Crikey, I'm struggling to get that out this evening. So he was undoubtedly, right, one of the most naturally gifted 2-footed players I think we've ever had at the Arsenal, wasn't he? But just with that in mind, I'd love for you to kind of take a look at, take a look down memory lane. What's when you hear, the name Santi Cazorla, what springs to mind for you? What comes flooding back?
You know what, it is mad because, I did go back and have a look at a few Santi Cazorla moments earlier on today. And on the little set of notes I've got here, the first thing I've written down is, was he left-footed or was he right-footed? He was a proper 2-footed player, and that was just what made him so dangerous. I'd say he was a classic Wenger attacker. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is that, he could play central, he could play wide, he would find space, he would combine well with other players. He didn't really have a fixed position. And, he was there at the time where you had players like Rosicky, you had players like Cazorla, and they would just be buzzing around, all interchanging, and he was a proper technician. But I think as well as that, I think if you were to kind of have hybrids of Ødegaard in terms of his technical ability, and then I know he's not the most popular of players, but I do feel like Cazorla, he did have a bit of a kind of Guendouzi type tenacity to him as well. He was able to take games by the scruff of the neck as well. And it was that kind of Man City away game. That 2-0 where, when you think of Cazorla, you think about him being, like I say, a technician, a really kind of skilled player. But that day he played a deeper role and he just made everything look easy. And, he scored a vital penalty that day. And, this is when Man City were really beginning to become the team they are at the moment. And he just made it look easy. And without him that day, we would have been nowhere near that 2-0 victory.
That City game that you brought up there, I'm pretty sure, was that the game where this clip gets shared every now and again. I think a lot of people do when they think of Santi Cazorla, but he went on that incredible mazy dribble through the centre of the pitch, making a few Man City players look pretty average.
I think it was outrageous, but that was him as a player, and that is what he was capable of doing. And unfortunately he plays for Arsenal at a time where things were difficult. Van Persie had just left, and he arrived in the same summer as Giroud and Podolski, and but he was our player of the season that year. He played all 38 games in that first season, and when you think about his injury issues that unfortunately plagued the latter part of his Arsenal career. You know, he was the first name on the team sheet for that whole season. And, you know, even when Ozil came in the year after, he still was playing, you know, a huge number of games, and he was able to adapt to Ozil being there and, you know, adapt his game, whether it be playing wide, whether it be playing a little bit deeper. And he was able to come up with some really quite important goals as well, which I'm sure we'll probably move on to that FA Cup final goal.
Yeah, no, actually, just before we do, though, it's funny that you mentioned that, you know, was he right-footed, was he left-footed? But there's always that story and that moment when he's lining up to take a corner, and basically Koscielny starts shouting over at him to take the corner with his other foot, which is just mad, right? When you think about it, it is just mental, isn't it? So he just adjusted himself and took it with his other foot, no problem. You know, it's just mad. To be that gifted with both feet is incredible. But moving on to that FA Cup goal, I mean, crikey, I think we were all, and I remember watching this in the Dublin Supporters Club at the time. I think we were all in a pretty dark place at 2-0 down against Hull. I mean, we'd only not long before suffered that horrific final defeat to Birmingham, which I think was probably still in our minds at the time. And to find ourselves 2-0 down to Hull City. It was managed by Steve Bruce as well, was it? Was it Steve Bruce? Was he managing Hull at the time?
I think it was. I mean, Alex Bruce was definitely playing because we were lucky not to be 3-0 down at that point.
No, I do remember. And Jesus Christ, what a free kick it really was. It was postage. It got us right back into the game, and it just lifted the whole mood. And I think it changed the trajectory of that game as well, to be perfectly honest with you. But where were you watching that game then, out of interest?
I was watching that game. I was actually moving house that weekend, unfortunately. I know, but it had been 9 years, so I wasn't expecting us to be in the FA Cup final. And I was moving house, and then so we were surrounded by boxes watching the game. And after the first 10 minutes, I wanted to start packing again, just because of how
you probably wanted to
the
get
whole
in.
thing was. Oh, geez, it was awful, wasn't it? But you know, if Santi Cazorla doesn't score that goal, we don't win that final. You know, he was the catalyst, and he was the reason why we, you know, I think that we went on to win the cup that day. And you think, imagine we didn't win the cup that day. It was another final that we got to where we'd, you know, choked at the last minute, and it had been so long since we won a trophy. And the little man steps up and, you know, finishes like that. And I genuinely do think, you know, I know we're biased and we think about Arsenal goals a lot more than what we do. Well,
we're not biased. We're not biased.
Maybe a little bit. Maybe a little bit. But, you know, I think it will go down as one of the great FA Cup final goals because, you know, he said it from 30 yards and the keeper's got no chance.
Yeah, no, it was superb. And it's funny, isn't it? You know, just talking about that game now, and I remember I don't remember feeling as nervous about a game than that one. So it really stands out in my memory, just being really on edge, and because you wanted it so bad, and you just didn't want to lose to Hull in the cup final. It would just not look good for the club. I know we'd probably done pretty poorly, like I just touched on there, not so long before that. But the relief I felt afterwards, fucking hell, like it was obviously joy, you know, ecstasy, all the other things, and everyone was having a great time and celebrating. But also, it's just that relief of, you know, we've got that monkey off our back. You know, with the drought was stopped. I definitely felt that afterwards. I'm sure you probably did as well.
Absolutely. And I don't know, in terms of other Cazorla moments, one I did look back up today was a lovely little hat trick that he scored against Reading away from home in 2012, and
scored a header.
He scored a header. The smallest guy on the pitch scores a header. It just shows
leapt like a salmon.
Leapt like a salmon. Just shows you the versatility of the man. And I got a little bit confused actually, because, you know, if you wanted to see goals that season, you went to Reading away, because that was the same season where we beat them 7-5 in the League Cup as well. And that Santi Cazorla hat trick was in a 5-2 win. So if you wanted to see goals that season, it was the Medeski was definitely the place to be. Yeah. So no, some nice little finishes, and, you know, just being in the right place at the right time. And like I alluded to earlier on, it was just such a shame that, injury did blight the latter stages of his career. And unfortunately, he never got the chance to have a proper goodbye at the Emirates, because unfortunately his contract ended with him having not managed to recover from that ankle injury.
Well, it was really serious, wasn't it? I mean, I remember looking at that. There was an article that went around, not long after he left Arsenal, about how bad that was. And I don't think it was necessarily treated as well as it probably should have been by the club, unfortunately. It got to the point where I think there were skin grafts that he had to do. I don't know whether you saw the photo that went around of his ankle where, the tattoo was non-existent, I think, or there was a bit of a tattoo from, I don't know what, there was a bit of a tattoo either transferred or covered. I'm not 100% sure. But, it's to the point I think they were talking about possibly losing, the foot altogether at one point because of the infections and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think you're really spot on that it was sad that we didn't get to say goodbye to little Santi, because he was quality. He's not a legend in my eyes of the club, but he's one of those kind of players that, he's a cult hero. I think I'd probably put him into that bracket. And it's also sad that you even hear how he talks about it even now. He's openly said, I think, a few times that he was sad that he didn't get to say goodbye, and how much he loved the club. It was the biggest club he ever played for, and he had the best time of his career, representing Arsenal, which is always nice to hear, isn't it, from a fan's perspective? But maybe one day, maybe a friendly against, who is he still playing out in Saudi Arabia? Is he or somewhere mad? Or
yeah, madness that he's still playing now. I mean, at one point, I think his surgeon said that, if he was able to walk around with his kids around his garden, he'd be lucky. So, the fact that he was able to play a few years at Villarreal afterwards, and now he's obviously having a great time over in, I don't know, where is it, Qatar or Saudi Arabia?
Qatar, that might be it,
Qatar, somewhere along
like
those lines. But so the fact that he is able to be enjoying his football, it's fantastic to see. And he will always have a little soft spot in my heart, little Santi Cazorla and those magic feet. And it is nice when you do see a Santi Cazorla shirt every so often as well, because you do see them. And
rightly so.
He took us through not a great period of Arsenal history. And I mean, just imagine him in our team now. What that'd be frightening.
A good way to look at it, I think, is he gave us joy in dark times. He really gave us some great moments, some fantastic footwork. Again, that 2 foot ability he had. The Santi shit, the Santi shuffle, I used to call it, where he'd shuffle it between his 2 feet to get around a play. It was great to watch. It's funny that you just mentioned Villarreal. I have got this in front of me. I don't think we can not talk about Santi Cazorla and that transfer to Villarreal, and probably one of the strangest transfer unveilings I think I've ever seen, and I will probably ever see. Do you remember it?
I think it will go down in history. I think it has, if you had David Blaine popping out at one point, that would be the only bit that would have topped it. It was just
weird.
Madness.
Fucking still intrigued to know how he did it. I'm sure it's really easy.
Well, it's magic, Kelvin. That's how it works.
It's magic. Oh, don't be like that. I need to know. I'm one of those people. Show me. I appreciate what you've done. There's a bit of talent there, but there's a way to do it. Show me the magic. But there we go. Yeah, really weird transfer unveiling. But I think, whenever I think of that transfer, that's the first thing that comes to mind, is that was just really odd. But yeah, Santi Cazorla, what a player. Is there anything else you want to add before we move on?
No, I think that's an odd way, but a fitting way to end Santi Cazorla's player profile.
Yeah, I think, good to put it there. Hasn't gone up in smoke. No pun intended. We had to get that one in, didn't we? But look, moving on then, it's that time for shirt of the week. And this week, I thought I made a really blinding choice. Cracking shirt. But when we dug into it, there's not a massive amount to look back on in the shirt. So if you're wanting to know what that shirt is, we decided to go all the way back to 2000, 2002. And it was our first ever commercially sold third shirt that was predominantly just brought out to wear in Europe, I believe. Not like today, as you pointed out to me, where we wear them at any given opportunity that we possibly can. And even to the point where actually let our goalkeepers wear them. There's no rules anymore. Imagine that back in the day. David Seaman rocking up in a third shirt with short sleeves as well. So yeah, we're going all the way back to that 2000, 2002. For those who aren't so familiar, it was an all dark navy number with some bright yellow trim with the yellow Dreamcast emblazoned across the middle. Quite an iconic sponsor when you look back at it, isn't it? Those Sega Dreamcast days.
Oh, lovely, weren't it? And I think you occasionally, don't you, see some of the modern kits mocked up with the old crest and the old sponsors, and oh yeah, it does look good.
Yeah, speaking of the old crest, that's something that just needs to happen. Look, guys, if you are listening, just keep sharing pictures of the new kits with the old crest and keep tagging Arsenal. It will happen. We'll put the pressure on. You know, we are gargantuan as a fan base, and we'll make that happen.
Well,
and
surely
we'd love
Steve
to see
can.
it.
Well, surely Steve can make it happen now as well with his connections to the club.
Oh, he's gonna be laughing to himself. He's gonna be having a few chuckles about that because he is Mr. Celebrity. He's got the ear of the club these days, I feel. So yeah, maybe Steve. There you go. When you listen to this, get in touch with you, with whoever you can. Make it happen. We all want to see it. But I had to look back at it. We actually, crazily, as much as I love this kit, only wore it 3 times. 3 times. And to be honest with you, if you really want to be precise, we only wore it 2.5 times. Because the first time we actually wore it was in a home Champions League game, of all places, against Sparta Prague. And it was a game, funnily enough, I was actually at. We won 4-2 with some great goals. Parla got the score sheet. I can't even get the words out this evening, but he got the score up and running with an absolute blinder with the outside of his right boot into the top corner. Lauren, Dixon, and Connor with the other goals. But what was kind of weird about it was there seemed to be a bit of a kit clash. And I didn't think it at the time. And I've even looked back at the highlights yesterday and I still don't really see it. Do you? I think they were clear enough, no?
No, I didn't really see it either, to be honest. And, we were 3-1 up at halftime, so it can't have been doing that bad a job.
No, absolutely not. Did you see who else got on the score sheet that evening for Prague, by any chance?
I did indeed. And Mr. A very, very young Mr. Thomas Rosicky. And it was a fantastic goal as well. Really,
it was.
Really, I mean, what else with a Thomas Rosicky goal? It was, taking on multiple players and then scoring from the edge of the area. So, interesting to see how, there's these little segues from one game into one day playing for the club. But
yeah. I think so. No, you go.
No, I think I was going to say that I think probably my memory of this shirt more than anything, and I don't really, I do know why. It's because I did own this shirt as a young lad, and I had Silvinho on the back of it, and I loved Silvinho at the time. I thought he was.
Me too.
He was a stunning footballer. He had pace. He was I think his attacking qualities were better than his defending qualities, but he was. He replaced Nigel Winterburn, and when you're coming in to replace someone who's been an iconic part of the defence for such a long time, it must have been difficult for him. He was the first Brazilian player we'd ever had, and unfortunately, his Arsenal career didn't really last that long.
No.
Ashley Cole was coming through at the time, and I believe there may have been some issues with a Portuguese passport as well, which meant that
definitely
he had to,
something.
I think he had to exit stage left probably quicker than what we anticipated. But no, that's one of the players that really kind of springs to mind when I do think about this kit. And it is a shame that it wasn't used as often as some of the other kits in our history. But I think it was, I think you alluded to it, it was kind of advertised as our European kit. And we used it when there was a clash. And it probably made sense at the time because we'd had difficulty playing Lens a few years earlier on, where we had to have that one-off kind of grail kit as people see it now. So, it made sense for us to have it. But no, we didn't have the best record in it, unfortunately.
No, we really didn't. But I tell you what's kind of brilliant, because the next game we actually played in it was away against Moscow. And funnily enough, Silvinho scored our only goal in a 4-1 defeat. So, I mean, look, at least you put someone on the back of the shirt who scored in it.
Exactly.
That's not the worst. And then our other game that we played in it was away at Mallorca. And again, wasn't a great outing. And we lost 1-0. What's quite unique, though, about the game against Moscow is the only time it was actually used as a long sleeve shirt, which that wasn't actually commercially sold, I believe. That shirt was only available in a short sleeve. So if you've got or can get hold of a match shirt, a match worn shirt with a long sleeve, that'd be pretty epic, to be honest with you. And that would definitely be one for the collector's item, that's for sure.
Yeah, that would be a few pennies, I would say, considering what some shirts are going for nowadays. At the moment, I think there's been some frightening amounts paid for shirts recently, but no, it's a shirt I do remember fondly, just because it was one of those shirts where, you know, it was the first time we'd had a third shirt. So I remember being excited by it, and it was something different for the club at the time. I remember having that Champions League ball on the sleeve, which, you know, what we give to have that Champions League ball at the moment.
God. But
yeah, you know, unfortunately, it didn't give us some of the memories that we've had with other kits. But I guess the only other weird thing I looked at with regards to that Sparta Prague game was who our centre backs were that game. Did you ever look at that?
No, I didn't, but hit me with it. I'm intrigued.
A centre back pairing of Luzhny and Vivas.
Holy mother of God. That was never going to go well, was it? What was Arsene Wenger thinking?
Well, I think there was issues with Adams and Keown at the time, so I don't think he had much choice. But yeah, I don't think that will go down as one of the more famous pairings in Arsenal history.
No. There you go. That's a name set you wouldn't see very often. Nelson Vivas. So actually, speaking of name sets, I do remember, just before we start to wrap this up, we were in, obviously, the pub there before the Leicester game, and you turned around to me, you know, all excited. And I remember we were talking to your missus after it, but I can't point this out to anybody. This is what I love about coming to the football. But you tapped me on your shoulder. You're like, look at that guy's name set over there. You had it on the back of that season's, funnily enough, Awake It, wasn't it? The yellow Sega. Yeah. What's that name set? I can't remember who it was now, off the top of my head.
Oh, you've torn me. Oh, who was it?
Was it not Paolo
Venazza? Paolo Venazza. I don't think I've ever seen another one.
No, a Paolo Venazza name set on the back of a shirt at a match. I mean, love to see it. Love these unique ones that you get from time to time. Big fan. So yeah, wear it with pride, my friend. But it was a truly unique shirt to see. But I guess, look, James, on that point, I guess we could probably wrap it up here. I think, look, as always, you know, I really would like to thank you, James, for taking the time out of your evening to join us and fill in for Steve. And obviously, listeners, you have to get used to James's beautiful notes that flow out of his mouth. He will be joining us on the regular for the pre-match pint moving forward. Steve is, as I said earlier, he's going to be a busy boy. He's got a lot on his plate in relation to getting married, which we'll all look forward to at the time. But look, as always, we'd just like to thank you for taking the time to listen to the podcast. We hope you've enjoyed it. If you do enjoy the show, please do leave us a review on Apple and Spotify. We'd greatly appreciate it. But look, please keep an eye on our social feeds for the next podcast. But until then, look after yourselves, look after each other. Take care. Goodbye.